The Zephyrian scout ship drifted through the void like a dying ember, its once pristine hull now scarred by countless micrometeorite impacts and the corrosive touch of deep space radiation. Captain Kethvar pressed his elongated fingers against the navigation console, watching the star charts with growing desperation. 3 cycles had passed since the Great Abandonment, and still no word from the Galactic Council. His people, the Zephyrians, had been the galaxy's premier archaeologists and historians for over 2 millennia. Their crystalline cities on Zephyr Prime housed the most comprehensive libraries in known space, containing the cultural memories of 1,000 civilizations. They had dedicated their existence to preserving knowledge, believing that wisdom and understanding could bridge any divide between species. But wisdom meant nothing when faced with political expediency. The trouble began when the Zephyrians discovered evidence of the Council's dark secret buried in ancient ruins on Kepler 442b. Hidden within deteriorating data crystals, they found records proving that the Council had systematically erased entire civilizations that opposed their expansion. Genocide disguised as natural disasters, wars manufactured to eliminate inconvenient populations, and the deliberate suppression of technologies that could threaten Council supremacy. Kethvar remembered the day he presented these findings to the Council chambers on Nexus Station. The massive amphitheater fell silent as holographic displays showed irrefutable proof of systematic extermination spanning centuries. The Zephyrian delegation had believed that truth would prevail, that the galaxy's governing body would acknowledge their crimes and seek redemption. Instead, they were branded as traitors and falsifiers of history. Within hours of their presentation, every Zephyrian ship was declared hostile. Trade agreements were terminated, diplomatic immunity revoked, and their home system was placed under indefinite quarantine. The Council's propaganda machine worked overtime, painting the Zephyrians as delusional isolationists who had fabricated evidence to discredit legitimate governance. Most damning of all, the Council issued a decree that made harboring or assisting any Zephyrian a crime punishable by exile from galactic society. Overnight, a race that had spent millennia building bridges between species found themselves completely alone in an uncaring universe. "Captain," called Velta from the communication station, her usually melodic voice strained with exhaustion. "I'm detecting another debris field ahead. Looks like the remains of the merchant vessel Starweaver." Kethvar's chest cavity constricted with grief. The Starweaver had been captained by his cousin Mordun, who had been attempting to reach the outer colonies with emergency supplies when the quarantine began. Like so many other Zephyrian ships, it had been intercepted and destroyed by Council enforcement fleets. "Any survivors?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "Negative. The wreckage patterns suggest complete hull breach. No escape pods launched." Velta's hands trembled as she operated her controls. "That makes 47 confirmed losses, Captain. How many more of our people have to die before someone listens?" The bridge fell silent except for the low hum of life support systems. Kethvar looked around at his crew of 12, the last free Zephyrians in this sector of space. Their violet-tinged skin had grown pale from months of poor nutrition, and their large, expressive eyes reflected a despair that cut him to his core. They had tried everything. Diplomatic channels were blocked, their messages intercepted and deleted before reaching potential allies. The few species that might have been sympathetic were too fearful of Council retribution to risk contact. Even the notorious smuggler networks refused Zephyrian currency, viewing them as radioactive cargo that would bring unwanted attention. "Set course for the frontier reach," Kethvar ordered finally. "If we're going to die, at least we'll die in unexplored space where our fate might remain unknown to those who condemned us." The frontier reach represented the absolute edge of charted space, where long-range sensors detected only scattered star systems and the occasional energy signature of unknown origin. Council ships rarely ventured there due to the prohibitive cost of maintaining supply lines across such vast distances. For the Zephyrians, it represented either salvation or a quiet place to meet their end. As their ship adjusted course toward the galactic rim, Kethavar activated the ship's cultural archive, a crystalline storage matrix containing the sum total of Zephyrian knowledge. At least their civilization's contributions wouldn't vanish entirely if they failed to find sanctuary. The journey to the frontier reach took 18 standard days, during which the crew subsisted on rapidly dwindling rations and recycled water that tasted increasingly of metal and desperation. Their ship's aging fusion reactor operated at barely 70% efficiency, forcing them to reduce life support to critical minimum levels. On the 19th day, their sensors detected something unexpected. A small yellow star with multiple planetary bodies, including one that registered as potentially habitable. More intriguing still, their passive scans picked up artificial energy signatures suggesting the presence of an unknown technological civilization. First contact protocols, Kethavar ordered, straightening his ceremonial robes despite their worn condition. If there's an undiscovered species here, we'll approach with full diplomatic courtesy. Perhaps the universe hasn't completely abandoned the concept of honor. As they drew closer to the third planet, their communications array intercepted electromagnetic transmissions in dozens of different frequencies. The signals carried what appeared to be entertainment broadcasts, educational content, and general communications traffic. Most surprisingly, the mathematical and linguistic structures suggested a relatively young civilization, perhaps only a few centuries into their technological development. "Captain," Veltha announced with growing excitement, "I'm detecting multiple artificial satellites and what appears to be a permanent space station in orbit around the planet. The technological signatures are unusual, primitive by Council standards, but remarkably diverse and innovative." Through the view screen, they could see the planet itself, a blue and green marble swirled with white clouds, remarkably similar to Zephyr Prime before industrialization. City lights dotted the night side, creating beautiful patterns that spoke of a thriving global civilization. But most remarkable of all were the inhabitants' radio transmissions, which their translation protocols gradually began to decode. The species called themselves humans, and their broadcasts revealed a fascinating paradox. Despite lacking faster-than-light travel or advanced energy manipulation technology, they had developed incredibly sophisticated information networks, artistic expression, and social organization systems. More importantly, their historical records spoke of concepts that resonated deeply with Zephyrian values: the pursuit of truth regardless of consequence, protection of the innocent and persecuted, and an almost reckless willingness to challenge authority when faced with injustice. "Should we attempt contact, Captain?" asked Navigator Vendal, his young features bright with hope for the first time in months. Kethavar considered carefully. First contact with a pre-warp civilization violated dozens of galactic treaties, but those same treaties had already been used to justify his people's extinction. Besides, the humans were clearly on the verge of achieving interstellar capability based on their orbital infrastructure and space-based manufacturing facilities. "Prepare a standard first contact package," he decided. "Mathematical proofs, basic universal concepts, and a brief explanation of our situation. If they choose to respond, we'll know more about their character. If they don't," he spread his hands in a gesture of acceptance, "then at least we'll have tried one last time to find friendship in this universe." As Veltha prepared the transmission, Kethavar found himself offering a prayer to the ancient Zephyrian spirits, not for salvation, which seemed beyond hope, but for the wisdom to handle this moment correctly. They were about to become the first aliens these humans had ever encountered, and the weight of that responsibility felt heavier than all their accumulated sorrows. The transmission array hummed to life, sending their carefully crafted message toward the small blue world below. Now all they could do was wait and hope that somewhere in the universe there still existed a species that valued truth over convenience and compassion over political expedience. Dr. Sarah Chen nearly dropped her coffee when the SETI array at Arecibo detected the first structured signal from deep space. After 30 years of listening to cosmic background radiation and stellar noise, the crisp, mathematical progression of prime numbers, followed by increasingly complex geometric proofs, made her hands shake with excitement and disbelief. "Marcus, get over here!" she called to her research partner, Dr. Marcus Rodriguez, who was reviewing telescope data at the adjacent workstation. "You need to see this right now." The signal originated from just beyond Pluto's orbit, suggesting that whoever sent it had approached Earth's solar system without being detected by conventional instruments. The transmission itself was a masterpiece of universal communication, beginning with basic mathematical concepts before progressing to atomic structures, stellar classifications, and finally, what appeared to be a simplified star map showing Earth's position relative to nearby systems. But the most compelling part came at the end. A series of images showing what appeared to be refugee ships, damaged and fleeing through space, followed by symbols that could only represent a plea for sanctuary. Within 6 hours, the message had been verified by 3 separate facilities and forwarded to the highest levels of government. By morning, a joint task force including representatives from NASA, the European Space Agency, the United Nations Security Council, and several major spacefaring nations had assembled via secure video conference. General Patricia Hawkins, commander of the newly formed Space Defense Initiative, spoke with characteristic directness. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're looking at humanity's first confirmed contact with an extraterrestrial intelligence. Based on linguistic analysis, these beings are requesting assistance and possibly asylum. I don't need to tell you that our response will define humanity's place in whatever galactic community exists out there." Dr. James Sullivan from the Vatican's Astronomical Observatory raised a question that had been troubling many of the assembled experts. The signal's sophistication suggests a highly advanced civilization, yet they're clearly in distress. What could threaten a species capable of interstellar travel? President Alexandra Morrison of the United States leaned forward in her chair. "More importantly, what does it say about us as a species if we turn away refugees, regardless of which planet they come from?" The debate that followed revealed the best and worst of human nature. Some argued for caution, fearing that any alien contact could lead to invasion or contamination. Others worried about the economic and social disruption that would result from revealing the existence of extraterrestrial life. A few even suggested that this might be an elaborate hoax or alien deception designed to lower Earth's defenses. But the majority of voices led by scientists, philosophers, and human rights advocates argued for a different approach. Dr. Amara Okafor, a refugee advocate from Nigeria who had been granted observer status, spoke with quiet passion about humanity's moral obligations. "Throughout our history, we have been at our best when we chose compassion over fear, when we opened our doors to those fleeing persecution and violence. Yes, this is unprecedented in scale, but the principle remains the same. These beings are asking for help. What kind of species would we be if we ignored that plea simply because they come from another world?" The turning point came when the aliens sent a second transmission, this one containing what appeared to be a cultural archive. The data package included art, music, literature, and historical records that painted a picture of a peaceful, scholarly civilization devoted to preserving knowledge and promoting understanding between species. Dr. Chen worked for 72 hours straight translating portions of the archive, assisted by linguistics experts from around the world. What emerged was the tragic story of the Zephyrians, a race that had dedicated themselves to documenting galactic history only to be destroyed by the very government they had tried to serve through their research. The evidence they had discovered was damning. Holographic records showed systematic genocides carried out by something called the Galactic Council, followed by elaborate cover-ups and historical revisionism. The Zephyrians had been branded as criminals and traitors simply for refusing to suppress the truth about these atrocities. "My God," whispered Dr. Rodriguez as he reviewed the translated documents. "They're like cosmic historians and librarians. All they wanted was to preserve knowledge and promote understanding. And they're being hunted to extinction for trying to expose war crimes." Public opinion shifted rapidly once portions of the Zephyrian archive were released to news media worldwide. The story of a peaceful species being persecuted for defending truth resonated strongly with human values and historical experiences. Memorial ceremonies were held for the 47 destroyed Zephyrian ships, and crowdfunding efforts raised millions of dollars for potential humanitarian aid. Religious leaders across all major faiths issued joint statements declaring that the divine commandments to shelter refugees and protect the innocent applied regardless of planetary origin. The Dalai Lama's words were particularly moving. "Compassion knows no boundaries of space or time. If we can extend our hearts to embrace the suffering of these distant beings, we grow closer to our own highest nature." Within a week, the United Nations passed Resolution 2157 by an overwhelming majority, formally offering Earth as a sanctuary for Zephyrian refugees and establishing protocols for peaceful first contact. The resolution included provisions for sharing technology and cultural knowledge while respecting both species' sovereignty and independence. But the most remarkable aspect of humanity's response came from ordinary citizens around the world. Amateur radio operators began transmitting welcome messages in multiple languages. Artists created works inspired by Zephyrian culture. Children sent drawings depicting humans and aliens working together. Scientists volunteered their time to help establish communication protocols and prepare for the refugees' arrival. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a xenobiologist from Mexico, summed up the prevailing sentiment. "For all our flaws and divisions, humans have always been at our best when faced with a clear choice between helping others or looking away. These Zephyrians represent something we can all admire, beings who chose truth and knowledge over safety and comfort. How could we not welcome them?" The practical preparations proved challenging but not insurmountable. Orbital platforms were hastily converted to serve as temporary habitats, while permanent facilities were constructed on the moon. Environmental engineers worked around the clock to create atmosphere and gravity conditions suitable for Zephyrian physiology. Medical teams prepared quarantine and health assessment protocols to ensure the safety of both species. Most importantly, human diplomats and philosophers began studying Zephyrian cultural practices to ensure that their guests would be treated with appropriate respect and understanding. The archive revealed that Zephyrians valued ceremony, intellectual discourse, and collaborative decision-making, principles that aligned well with humanity's own diplomatic traditions. On a cold November morning, exactly 2 weeks after first contact, the Zephyrian scout ship began its final approach to Earth orbit. Television networks provided round-the-clock coverage as humanity prepared to welcome its first interstellar refugees. Children around the world had drawn welcome banners in their school languages, while adults gathered in public squares to witness this historic moment. Captain Sarah Mitchell of the International Space Station transmitted the official greeting as the alien vessel came within visual range. "Zephyrian ship, this is Earth. You are welcome here. We have prepared safe harbor for you and your people. Humanity stands ready to offer you friendship, sanctuary, and whatever assistance you need." The response came in heavily accented but clear English. "Earthship, this is Captain Kethvar of the Zephyrian vessel Truth Seeker. We accept your offer of sanctuary with gratitude beyond expression. We come seeking not conquest or conversion, but simply a place to exist and continue our work of preserving knowledge for future generations. As the damaged alien vessel approached Earth's orbital stations, humans and Zephyrians alike prepared for a meeting that would change both civilizations forever. For the first time in months, Kethvar allowed himself to hope that his people's long nightmare of isolation and persecution might finally be coming to an end. The universe had revealed its capacity for both cruelty and kindness. Now it remained to be seen whether this partnership between two very different species could grow into something that might eventually challenge the forces that had driven the Zephyrians from their home among the stars. 6 months after the Zephyrians' arrival on Earth, the Luna Colony Research Station had been transformed into something unprecedented in galactic history. A joint human-alien academic institution dedicated to preserving and expanding knowledge across species boundaries. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the station's main observatory, watching Captain Kethvar work alongside her human colleagues to decode ancient star charts that might reveal the locations of other persecuted civilizations. The partnership had exceeded everyone's expectations. Zephyrian memory crystallization technology combined with human digital processing power had created information storage systems capable of preserving entire civilizations' worth of cultural data. Meanwhile, human manufacturing techniques enhanced by Zephyrian materials, science had produced ships and habitats far superior to anything either species could have built alone. But their greatest achievement was something neither species had anticipated. They had begun to attract other refugees. "Captain Chen," called Dr. Marcus Rodriguez from the Communications Center, using her recently granted military title, "We're receiving another distress signal. This one's from a species calling themselves the Cathara. They're requesting sanctuary and claiming to have evidence of Council atrocities committed against their homeworld. This made the 7th refugee group to contact Earth in the past month. Word of humanity's willingness to shelter the persecuted had spread through underground networks spanning hundreds of light years. Each new arrival brought additional evidence of the Galactic Council's crimes, building an overwhelming case for systematic genocide and oppression that spanned millennia. Kethvar approached the human officers, his violet features showing the stress of recent revelations. "The Cathara were musicians and artists," he explained. "Their crystal symphonies could resonate across dimensional barriers, creating art that existed in multiple realities simultaneously. The Council claimed they were using their abilities to communicate with hostile extra-dimensional entities." "And were they?" asked General Hawkins, who had been granted expanded authority over Earth's growing extraterrestrial refugee program. "Of course not. The Cathara were pacifists who believed that beauty could bridge any divide between conscious beings. Their only crime was refusing to weaponize their dimensional resonance technology for Council military applications." Dr. Elena Vasquez, now serving as Earth's first xenocultural liaison, shook her head in disgust. "The same pattern every time. A peaceful species develops something unique and wonderful. The Council tries to steal it for military use, and when they refuse, they're branded as threats and eliminated." The scale of the Council's crimes had become clear as more refugee species arrived. The Verdani Plant Consciousness Collective had been destroyed for refusing to serve as biological weapons. The ethereal energy beings had been dispersed across space for declining to share their matter conversion technologies. The mechanical nexus minds had been systematically hunted after developing artificial intelligence systems that could think independently of their creators. In each case, the pattern was identical: approach, demand, refuse, eliminate. The Galactic Council had spent centuries stealing technologies and destroying any species that valued independence over submission. But humanity's response had been different from anything the Council had encountered before. Instead of hiding their refugee assistance programs, Earth had begun broadcasting the truth about Council atrocities to every inhabited system within range of their communications networks. Human hackers worked with Zephyrian information specialists to penetrate Council propaganda networks, replacing official broadcasts with documented evidence of genocide and oppression. The results were beginning to show. Several Council member species had begun questioning their government's actions, and some were even secretly funneling supplies to Earth's refugee colonies. Most significantly, the Hegemony Defense Force was experiencing widespread desertion as individual soldiers learned the truth about their missions. Admiral Jiang Wei, commander of Earth's rapidly expanding fleet, reported encouraging intelligence from deep space reconnaissance missions. Our allies in the outer systems report that Council enforcement patrols are being reassigned to protect core worlds. They're losing control of the frontier regions, and more species are declaring independence every week. The success had come at a cost, however. Long-range sensors detected massive Council battle fleets moving toward Earth's sector of space. The refugees' sanctuary would soon become a battlefield, and humanity found itself facing enemies with technology centuries ahead of their own. Captain Kethvar had spent weeks working with human military strategists to prepare defensive plans, but the odds were overwhelming. "The Council will deploy planet killers," he warned grimly. "They've used them before to eliminate inconvenient populations. A single antimatter torpedo could sterilize Earth's surface in minutes." Yet humanity refused to surrender or abandon their refugee allies. Instead, they did something that baffled galactic strategists. They began preparing for asymmetric warfare on an interstellar scale. Colonel Maria Santos, formerly a Special Operations Commander and now leader of Earth's Partisan Defense Corps, outlined their strategy to the Joint Human-Alien Command Staff. "We can't match their firepower ship to ship, but we don't have to. Our refugee friends have given us detailed intelligence about Council logistics, communication networks, and supply chains. We're going to fight like guerrillas across 1,000 star systems." The plan was audacious and unprecedented. Human volunteers would be inserted into Council-controlled systems using Zephyrian stealth technology, where they would work with local resistance movements to sabotage infrastructure and spread information about Council atrocities. Meanwhile, Earth's rapidly growing fleet would conduct hit-and-run attacks against isolated Council installations, always avoiding direct confrontation with superior forces. Most importantly, they would continue broadcasting the truth about Council crimes, using entertainment media, news broadcasts, and cultural exchanges to undermine the government's legitimacy among its own people. The first major engagement came when a Council enforcement fleet attempted to blockade Earth's solar system. Instead of meeting them in open battle, human and Zephyrian ships scattered across the outer planets, launching coordinated attacks against the enemy's supply vessels and communication relays. Captain Mitchell, now commanding the Joint Forces frigate Unity, led a squadron of modified human fighters enhanced with Zephyrian shield technology in a devastating assault on the Council flagship's sensor arrays. "Target their eyes and ears," she transmitted to her pilots. "Make them fight blind." The battle lasted 6 days and ended with the Council fleet's retreat, but not through superior firepower. Human information warfare specialists had infiltrated the enemy's communication networks and broadcast footage of the destroyed refugee ships directly to every screen and speaker in the fleet. Faced with undeniable evidence of their government's crimes, nearly 30% of the Council forces defected rather than continue fighting. Commander Veltha, now serving as Earth's diplomatic liaison to refugee species, summarized the significance of their victory. For the first time in galactic history, the Council lost a military engagement not because they were outgunned, but because their own people refused to fight an unjust war. The victory had reverberations throughout the galaxy. dozens of council member species declared independence, forming a new alliance based on mutual aid and protection rather than submission to central authority. The refugee colonies around Earth became the nucleus of a growing federation dedicated to preserving cultural diversity and protecting the rights of all conscious beings. Most remarkably, humans found themselves serving as both military leaders and moral guides for this emerging galactic democracy. Their history of overcoming oppression and fighting for freedom resonated with species across the galaxy who had suffered under council rule. Dr. Amara Okafor, now serving as Earth's representative to the Galactic Freedom Alliance, reflected on humanity's unexpected role in galactic affairs. "We thought we were just helping some refugees find a safe place to live. Instead, we've become the catalyst for the largest liberation movement in galactic history. All because we chose to do what we've always believed was right: protect those who cannot protect themselves." As Earth's population celebrated their victory and prepared for the larger conflicts ahead, Captain Kethvar stood in the Luna Colony Observatory, watching new refugee ships arrive every day. His people had been saved, but more importantly, they had found something they had lost during their persecution: hope for a better future. The universe was vast and often cruel, but it also contained species like humanity, who would risk everything to defend the principle that truth and compassion should triumph over fear and oppression. Together, humans and their alien allies would build something new among the stars, a civilization based not on dominance, but on the revolutionary idea that all conscious beings deserved freedom, dignity, and the right to exist without persecution. The Galactic Council had ruled through fear for millennia, but they had never faced an enemy like humanity, a species that grew stronger when fighting for others than when fighting for themselves. The war for galactic freedom had only just begun, but the outcome was no longer in doubt.